This is a presentation that he made to the public, which will then qualify everybody for FEMA. As the city, basically, this is to help people like the planning department and building and safety know what they should be doing to keep us safe. Please come introduce yourself.
Great, thank you. My name is Denise Davis, and I'm with a company called Tetra Tech. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. It's a very large environmental engineering firm across the United States and works internationally. And we have a small little quadrant of that for emergency management, and I work in that section. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. I have been an emergency manager for local governments for 30 years. Working in cities, the city of Cypress, the city of Westminster. I worked in El Segundo for 3 years on contract staff. About 10 years ago, I left the public sector and became a consultant, and I've worked for Tetra Tech now for several years, and really enjoy it because I get to go around and meet a lot of different people, and that was something that you don't get to do in local government. You have to work at one place. So today we're going to talk about a project that's been going on for 6 months here in the city of Los Angeles. We were revising the local hazard mitigation plan. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. If I could get my clicker there. So what is hazard mitigation? Well, it's actions that are taken to reduce or eliminate risk from hazards. So we're looking at life first, and then property second, environmental third, and that's kind of typically the way governments look at things. First you want to save lives, then you want to protect property, then you want to protect the environment. This all falls under the federal 44 Code of Federal Regulations. What happened was back in the 90s, we had, even prior to then obviously, we've had series and series, years and years of disasters. Flooding in the Midwest, ice and snow in the east, and here in California we have earthquakes. And so we had a few large earthquakes in the 90s, and the federal government tends to provide assistance to local governments and counties and the state and to tribal governments, and they came up with this Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 to use as a basis to make cities and the state and tribal prepare in advance for these types of events. And so what the DMA of 2000 was that you have to have an approved hazard mitigation plan in order to receive hazard mitigation funding. And so it was kind of a buy-off, like you have to prepare and know what you're doing before we're going to provide you with funding. So FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, I'm going to try and not use acronyms, so call on me if I do, but an approved hazard mitigation plan gives cities, counties, local governments, tribal, the state, funding opportunities for capital projects to better prepare. And oftentimes capital projects are extremely expensive and cities don't have the funding for that. So this is a good way for them to get some funding to do projects that will actually prevent or mitigate damage from disasters. I don't know what I'm doing.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Under the new administration, is there going to be any funding, mitigation funding available?
Under the new administration, I think I'm going to be looking for another job. President Trump is due to cut emergency management funding by $1 billion and $500 million in pre-disaster mitigation grants. And so, I don't know, it's a huge, huge issue. He's just now appointing a new person to the Federal Emergency Management Agency. I don't remember his name, but I'm hoping that he's up and says, no, you can't do that, especially in California. I don't know. That's devastating to emergency management all over the nation to have cuts that size.
Because they're already threatening to cut the earthquake warning system funding.
Yeah, that is another one on the list to go. Pardon me?
Is it just for natural disasters?
Well, I have a slide on that coming up, but the legal regulation was for natural disasters. In the state of California, they added technological and human-caused disasters. And I have a couple of examples of that. So let me get back to this planning process for the hazard mitigation plan, the revision of that. We started in January. We pulled together a 26-person steering committee, and that was from the departments within the city and outside stakeholders and citizens that were interested. So we had a couple people from the CERT program, we had some from neighborhood councils, and we had representatives from the United States Geological Survey, from University of Southern California, from UC Los Angeles, UC Pomona, in the geological departments, and that were very interested in looking at the hazards in the city of Los Angeles. There are 7 phases of a planning process, and we're just going to go through those really quickly so you can hear what the City of Los Angeles Emergency Management Department has been doing for the last 6 months and all of the different things that we've achieved in order to get this plan done in a 6-month time period. I want to say normally these plans are about a 12 to 18-month time period, but they needed it done, and so we pulled out all the big guns and we got it done. And I'm really happy about that we could accomplish that in the short time that we had together. So the first step is project organization, and that's just pulling everybody together. So we came up with a steering committee, which is really an advisory board for process decisions. So not really decisions on what the city's going to do, but just how are we going to get this plan done. The second thing we were doing here in the organization was reviewing plans. So we looked at the city's 2011 hazard mitigation plan, because that's obviously what we were starting from to revise. We also looked at the state of California plan. And in this phase here, we developed the steering committee charter, a mission statement, several goals, objectives, and a public involvement strategy. So we were off and running within the very first meeting, actually. We had a lot accomplished there in the first meeting. The mission statement here, to reduce risk and increase resilience. The mission of Los Angeles Local Hazard Mitigation Plan is to establish and promote comprehensive mitigation policy and program to protect the residents, property, public facilities, infrastructure, and the environment. And you'll see there from natural and man-made hazards. Some states still go by just natural hazards, and you will see in many, even in California, many plans are written with just natural hazards because that's all that the federal government requires. But we wanted to go bigger than that, so we did all of the hazards, and it just shuts something off here. So the mitigation goals were this. If you want to just take a minute to read them, I don't want to be the talking head up here. But we felt that these were goals that would cover pretty much everything within the community of Los Angeles. Any questions on this?
Does that include like we just had over there, the neighborhood council meeting there, about the oil drilling that's going on over there in Jefferson Park area, Adams, and then the Culver City area. They steadily drilling. I told them, I remember a lot of those people over there, they got paid off, started getting paid off 30, 35 years ago. I was on the sheriff, but it's just coming to the consciousness of what's really going on. So they're trying to mitigate these fumes and the sicknesses that's going on over there. Yeah. But they paid them off a long time ago, but they didn't know this was going to come down the pipeline.
Right.
So right. This is happening right now over there.
That should be included in a section that we write on critical infrastructure and facilities. And so we look at types of things like, oil and gas lines and that kind of stuff. And we do pretty extensive research on that, so that should be in there. Oh my goodness. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here.
You're hitting the button, that's where you keep hitting the wrong button.
I'm hitting the one below it, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So after organization, we conduct a risk assessment. And we confirmed the hazards in Los Angeles. And again, we were going to add technological and human cause. And so we kind of went through the gamut of every type of hazard that could ever occur and pick out which ones could occur here in the city. We came up with 21 hazards that have a very good probability of occurring here in the city. So we looked to do a risk assessment on those hazards. And then we assessed the hazards according to how often they could occur, the probability of occurrence. There's kind of a little mathematical equation there that risk is equal to the probability of a hazard times the impact of the hazard. So we needed to find out what the impact of those 21 hazards were. And this is where United States Geological Survey and the two universities really came in to play here quite a bit. USC had a program going on for climate change and sea level rise, and they provided most of the data from that. So we were working with PhDs from all of these, and which is rare. I mean, you don't really get that opportunity that often. So we have very, very good data. But we used a program. It's from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It's called HAZIS, and it's a risk assessment platform. So we run models of all of the different infrastructure and the facilities that are within the city, and then run them according to different models of, let's say, for example, earthquakes and the potential for how large an earthquake that would be. So for earthquakes, we ran 5 different models for the earthquake faults that were or have the potential to cause the greatest damage within the city of Los Angeles. And so then we would calculate by getting the dollars and cents from the planning department on how much the facilities were worth. And we could actually come up with dollar amounts of loss. And so all of that is in the plan. Under the risk assessment section, you'll find 21 hazards and all of the different things that could happen, the potential, and then eventually a table with the amount of loss that could occur.
So you've identified the cost of the buildings. What about the cost of the people, the lives lost? How does that factor?
Well, that is always written first. We can't come up with a dollar figure for that. In a mitigation plan, you're looking to mitigate not just preventing injury, but how to mitigate the loss of the properties as well. And so in a hazard mitigation plan, you always write, that the loss of lives is number one at all times. But secondary to that, can the city mitigate something to retrofit buildings so that there isn't as great a loss of life? That is how we kind of look at that. I'm sorry, what?
How do you put lives in the formula?
Well, you can't. You can't really put lives in the formula, but you can understand that in a facility or a building that needs to be retrofitted or needs, to have something done to it to make it a stronger building so that it won't collapse during an earthquake or that kind of thing, then you would be preventing injuries and loss of life in that way. You have a question.
But you could always use the count of the number of lives threatened by a particular facility to help set priorities. My question is, what fault system did you find would be the biggest detriment to the city?
It is wasn't it the Puente Hills thrust fault? Puente Hills? I'm looking.
Runs through the Los Angeles.
Yes, the fault that runs directly under most of the section of the high-rise
Yeah,
buildings
Puente
is that the Puente Hills. And that actually came up with numbers in loss higher than our company has ever seen. It was in the tens of billions of loss for those. And so that started a huge conversation on why are we letting high-rise buildings being built? And you have to kind of go, okay, let's backtrack because we need to get onto what can we do to mitigate that, not what, it's kind of interesting.
I have a question. part of the risk assessment, was there any coordination or conversations with neighboring cities that could have an impact in the city of Los Angeles?
We didn't really have a lot of neighboring cities interested in attending.
Okay.
And so, but we always look at all of the neighboring cities to see what impact things that are in those cities could have.
Okay, because I just, from personal experience, personal knowledge, up in the northeast end of the valley, there's a small business that basically has a radiation hot room.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
which would definitely affect that.
When we write about the hazards, we include not just what's exactly in the city, but what is within that county as well. Because, like you said, it can, you know, a windy day and you could ruin the city.
Oh, in
so.
the event of an earthquake, I mean.
Right. So we
So.
do look at it from a county perspective as well.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Will this risk assessment be made public?
Yes, in fact, this plan is available for you to look at now. And at the end of the thing, I'm going to give you the website where you can locate that so you can look at that. Yes.
Can you spell out some of the acronyms on the bottom there?
Yes. So FEMA is Federal Emergency Management Agency. I don't know the acronym for hazards, honestly. Hazard assessment. Bah. I don't know.
Okay, go just the others then.
And then LHMP is short for Local Hazard Mitigation Plan, and HMP is Hazard Mitigation Plan. The state of California doesn't call their planning local because it's a statewide development of a plan. So, so we determined critical operating facilities. So those facilities in the city that have the highest level of people inside. So we were looking at the operating facilities for the city, fire stations, police stations, all of the different response agencies during an emergency, and continuity of government. So we need to make sure that the government can continue to run. Yes, John?
Hazard stands for Hazards US.
Oh, Hazards US.
US.
Okay. See, I would have never guessed that. I was trying to think of the Z, and I just couldn't come up with it. Yeah.
You said that this was tens of billions, was the highest ever seen
By our company. By our company, yeah. We write hazard mitigation plans all over the nation, and that was like a wow factor for us to see what that potential for the Puente Hills thrust fault in downtown Los Angeles would be. And it was very interesting because we had the gentleman, professor from United States Geological Survey, and he ran the models from USGS, and it was very, very similar. So we feel like we were right because we had scientists in the room with us that were double checking our numbers and our figures, and so we felt like what was in the plan, what was put in the plan was very close to correct. Obviously, they're estimates, they're models, but they felt that it was very probable. How's that?
Well, you're all using the same models and the same numbers.
Pardon me?
It's not like it's a completely independent scientist in your company, or
Yeah.
it's not an orthogonal model, so you're all using the same numbers.
Well, no. I mean, we had access to planning data that USGS didn't really, wasn't able to go in and get the latest data. I'm sorry, what?
Okay.
Let's move on, huh?
This is great. When you looked at the resources that could be brought to bear on the risk that you found, did you come up with a percentage of how many of those incidents, let's say from a major earthquake that USGS predicts, that 7, 9, or 8,
Yeah.
our services, particularly to the fire department, can handle during the golden day?
I mean, I don't know that we got exact percentages, but I mean, the fire department was a part of the planning process. And so we were able to look at the city's capabilities and what that would provide to assist during these types of incidents. I don't know if that answers your question.
I wanted to cross-check what I did. I modeled that with my simple tools, and I came up with, using USGS predictions, the fire department, without additional help, could handle 1.1% of the total incidents that need to be addressed. Does that sound anywhere reasonable?
That might be right because.
Well, it does
in the
because,
city, we've got 4 million people. We have that large scale shakeout, that large, just based on that, there's only 3,000 firefighters,
In the
working
city
in
of
the
4
city,
million
and only a
people.
third of them are on shift. So, and a lot of some of these firefighters don't even live in the city. So by the time they get in, 1% sounds, of all the stuff we have,
Sounds reasonable. Okay.
The Des Park fire, they had county resources coming in as well.
But this is without, he said without.
Golden
But
Day.
yeah, but
Yeah.
again, just LAFD alone was not able to do the
Yeah.
Des Park fire.
So,
Thanks.
So these are the hazards that we identified within the city. If you just want to take a look, see if there's anything, these are alphabetical, not according to natural or technological or human caused.
Probably anything else, it's about right.
Yeah, we had initially did not have space weather, and then we got into a big discussion about space weather and how it can affect traffic control for planes and how it can, affect all kinds of things. And what were you saying? Didn't you say something about this coming
the
up?
solar eclipse that's supposed to happen August 21st is
Yeah.
gonna affect the people that have solar electrical in their homes. It's supposed to hamper it for whatever, how many minutes, because when, since Cali-Del and LA, we're not gonna get totality, but we'll get partial, but still it's supposed to affect some of the solar panels and how electrical, how
Right.
they're gonna do it,
So we threw space weather into it because we thought, why not just go for
And
as
the
much as
solar
we can
flares
find?
too that happen and affect satellite.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the plan, there are, assessments for all of these different hazards, and it talks about, what could happen, what's the source, it goes into very in-depth descriptions of, so that we could conduct an adequate assessment. There we go. Yes.
Can you clarify on transportation?
Yes. Okay.
The
Let me
others
go
are
back
pretty
and clarify maybe some of
self-explanatory,
what
but
these are.
Transportation doesn't seem quite as self-explanatory.
Okay, so adverse weather, high winds, severe heat, that type of thing, civil unrest.
No, I'm
Just the
about
transportation.
Number 19, transportation.
Transportation would be sources of transportation, so train, automobiles, airplanes, helicopters, those types of things. So incidents of emergency or disaster as a result of a transportation incident. That makes sense. Any others, questions that don't? Okay, good. The next phase is publication, public education and outreach. And so we first wanted to make sure that we had public representatives on the steering committee and stakeholders that were involved. So that's what our steering committee was put together with. We put together a hazard mitigation website on the City of Los Angeles Emergency Management Department website page. And we put information about hazard mitigation, what the steering committee was doing, invitation to the public to attend, all of the agendas, meeting minutes, that kind of thing. And then as we came up with some draft documents, we put them up there. As we came up with locations where we were going to do public outreach, we had a blurb about that. We used social media to advertise a public survey that we came up with. So it was a very simple survey, 21 questions, only takes 5 to 10 minutes to fill out, and we wanted to put that out to as many of the community as we could. Next door, the City of Los Angeles has an account with about 250,000 recipients, so we sent that out there. Twitter, Facebook, we had departments put that on their Twitter and Facebook. Please take the survey, we're revising the plan. And then on the departmental websites, we asked them to put a blurb about hazard mitigation so that we could get people involved in it and have them read about what the city was doing. We also wanted to do physical go-to an opportunity or an outreach opportunity. So we attended several expos and conferences and things in the city. We were at the Abilities Expo. It was a seismic retrofit resource fair for people that need to retrofit their homes or apartment buildings due to seismic hazards. We went to a preparedness workshop for businesses and organizations. We did a presentation at the Faith Communities and Government meeting, and then we're here at the Neighborhood Council Coalition meeting, and we're hoping that you will go back to your council group and say, please take the survey, go on the website, take a look at the plan. We have email address if you want to provide comments, or we have something right on the website that you can just click the button and write in comments right there to the Emergency Management Department about that. Yes?
What is the hazard mitigation website? What's their URL? I mean, how would I find that?
I have it at the end of the
Oh,
thing.
thank you.
I have the, yeah, for you. The next step would be to develop, yes, I'm sorry.
Question on the outreach.
Yes.
Was there specific emails sent to the neighborhood councils, like the 1,800 neighborhood council board members? Because myself and my colleagues don't recall ever having seen that.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I did not write that. I was working with the Emergency Management Department, and so I'm not exactly sure. We would kind of, as the anchor, put out, please, you know, please send this out. I don't know, no.
I know that EMD.
If you didn't get one, I would say no.
Yeah, the
I
project
don't know.
manager on this team, my colleague, because then I know we send it out to all city departments, and done is one of our city departments. Whether what they did with it, I guess they didn't. Yeah.
When was that sent?
I have no idea. I'm not the project manager, but I think I take it back. I think it might have been several months ago when the city departments it was pushed out to all city departments by EMD. So I don't know.
Why don't we take that up offline?
Yeah.
No, it's an important question. We're a coalition of neighborhood councils.
I
And
understand.
if we're not getting the message sent to the neighborhood council, I think that's an important situation to resolve here and now.
Then
So if it was sent to the department and the department did not send it out to the neighborhood councils, we need to figure that out.
Okay, Glenn, we can handle that with EMD.
Well,
I got it, and I
Glenn is
forwarded it
right
to my
here.
list about 2.5, 3 months ago. Oh, you did get it? Never saw
yeah, Glenn is right here because we have been in existence.
it. Yes, but Denise is not the person.
No.
For 18 months.
Okay, after she finishes her presentation, maybe we can have that discussion.
After I leave the building. Okay. Okay, so the prior hazard mitigation plan had 407 actions that the city was looking at doing to mitigate risk. And honestly, when we started reviewing that, we found a lot of those to be day-to-day capabilities, emergency preparedness actions, things like that. And what we're looking for here are things that are a little bit more substantive than that. So we wanted to clean out some of the things. We had the departments go through all of the actions and say, did you do the action? Did you complete it? Did you delete it because it was no longer a viable action to do? And so we cleaned up a lot of those prior to developing new actions so that we could look at what are your activities that are ongoing? Do you want to continue them for the next 5 years? Hazard mitigation is done in a 5-year cycle. And so departments were able to go through and really clean out the actions and in a way start fresh, but a lot of them kept some of those ongoing actions continued in this 2017 plan. And then we looked at the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and obstacles to opportunities for the city. So that's where you would look at, you know, how robust is their fire department? What does the public works department have to assist during an emergency? We looked at all of those kinds of things And then, what are the weaknesses? Well, we looked at transportation is a weakness here, that there's a lot of transportation going on through the city that could cause a lot of hazards. And so we just noted that so that, you know, whoever's working on transportation within the city can look at that and say, well, what can we do about it? You know, is there something we could do about that to mitigate some of it? Pardon me?
How does transportation cause hazard?
Clog up the freeways, clog up the streets.
That's not a hazard, that's an everyday life.
That is an issue that needs to be addressed. We are not funding, we're not getting developers to fund the infrastructure needed to accommodate all the people that they add. So we're out of infrastructure, and that is the problem.
Then we held action planning workshops, so we could get the steering committee members from the departments together and talk about what kind of actions could they come up with for the next 5 years. And then those departments developed actual actions that they were interested in pursuing over the course of the next 5 years. And we put those into the plan. But we whittled it down to 107, which is far more manageable for a city to look at conducting, you know, projects for things. And so that is a large section of the plan, is the mitigation action plan. Some of those examples, and these are just more theoretical, but retrofitting of buildings, water systems, fuel systems, education programs for the community, building code, zoning, those types of things are what are in the plan, what the departments wanted to work on. And you can see them when you go online and look at that. Then we came up with the plan maintenance strategy. So again, I said this is a 5-year cycle. Well, you have to, per FEMA and the Code of Federal Regulations, you have to review the plan to make sure if anything has changed that it is updated. And so they came up with an annual review. So departments have to review the plan annually, update whatever has been changed or added or renewed. And then prior to that 5-year cycle, the city has to get together and update the 2017 plan prior to the date that it was adopted. And so they wrote in there, you know, how that they would start a year before and start looking at updating the plan so that they had plenty of time to do that. They also want to integrate the plan into other planning mechanisms. So we want to look at the actions within the plan and include that in capital improvement programs or other planning mechanisms. There's a lot of environmental things going on in the community. And so we have environmental actions that departments want to take. Let's put our heads together and try and accomplish some of those together. And then look at public participation, because it's a requirement to keep the public involved in hazard mitigation planning. And so they have to, in some way, perhaps you will be getting those emails because they'll say, you know, we're having a meeting coming up about hazard mitigation, and invite the community to participate. Then we, Tetra Tech, got together and put the plan together. And so part of that is developing that plan. We have a large profile of the city of Los Angeles with all of those sub areas within the plan. We ran a capability assessment, so we looked at all of the aspects of the city, what they are capable of providing. The risk assessment was, again, that hazard section, and the mitigation strategy. So we looked at how the city is going to continue mitigation throughout the next 5 years, and the action plan, and then implementing the plan. Yes?
When it says risk assessment, you say profile and ranking of hazard. Is that ranking of the probability of a hazard, or when we have a hazard, what the probability of the outcome? Because it's two different things.
It's that formula again, which is risk is equal to the probability by the impact. And so they put that in, and in each section of the plan, they rank that as this is the 19th highest risk in the city. That kind of thing. Does that make sense? Yes.
I think that that's potentially a little bit confusing using that terminology.
Sorry.
I can't.
Sorry, ordinarily we would refer to that as an expectation value. And when you call it a risk, I think that can be a little confusing.
Okay. Well, that's what the scientists call it. I've worked with it, so I don't know. In hazard mitigation plans, they use the term risk. So I don't know. That would be something you'd have to bring up at one of those meetings and say that's confusing to the layperson. We would understand it better to say expectation. Implementing the plan, the city council needs to formally adopt the plan, and then the plan will serve as a framework for the city of Los Angeles to implement projects throughout the next 5 years in order to assist in eliminating or lessening the risk here in the community. So we have a hazard mitigation survey on SurveyMonkey. So you can actually go to SurveyMonkey, and there is a website there. I should probably send this to you, Joanne, and you could send it.
I'll send it, you can send it to me and
Okay.
I'll send it to Len, and Len can push it out.
Push it out to everybody? Okay, that works for me. Again, it's 21 questions. It's gauging the public's perception of risk or expectation. And we are currently, last I checked, was 1,871 responses. We would like to reach at least over 2,000 for a city of 4 million people. We would like.
Is that the same one you sent to me for the faith-based?
Yes.
Okay, I'll send it to Len right now when I go back to my desk.
Actually, there are a few changes in this.
Oh,
I'll send it to you as soon as I get.
okay.
Okay. And so you can take the survey, or it is also on the hazard mitigation plan page on the Emergency Management Department website. So both of those links are there. And then we have the plan.
If the plan is written and waiting for approval, why are we doing surveys?
Pardon me?
If the plan is written waiting for the city approval, why are you still doing surveys?
Because this is the public comment period, and so when we get comments in from community members or from departments or stakeholders, we will evaluate that and make changes to the plan prior to submitting that to the state for review. So there's still an opportunity to bring something up, expectations, whatever. There's still that opportunity.
Can you give it a couple of examples of what sort of questions are on that survey?
One of them is, have you ever experienced or participated in this type of a hazard? And, you know, people would click, yes, I've been in an earthquake, no, I haven't, whatever.
Is this something that
And
would be useful to do at a neighborhood council meeting, or somebody have to people?
Speak up.
that would be something useful to do at a neighborhood council meeting. I heard in that time.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in other words, you're collecting the data,
Right.
so if we did these surveys as part of our outreach program, then we could.
Yes, and then we would go in and we would pull that information and we would change the data from the survey prior to submitting that for approval.
But it's
We
a
still
survey-
have time to.
It's a survey for individuals. The way I took it,
Yes.
and the way I read it.
Yes, it
It's
is.
for an individual rather than a neighborhood council.
But
No, I
if
understand
you-
that. The point is that
Okay.
we have neighborhood councils available to us, and we can go to neighborhood councils and do outreach to 600 people, just the number of people in this room, because we can hit 20 or 30 apiece, collect the results, and then mail them all to the legislature.
Okay, folks, we're going to have to wrap up with these.
Yeah, okay. So the final thing I want to say is that the hazard mitigation plan is in draft form. It is available as well on the City of Los Angeles Emergency Management Department webpage, and there is a little section in the upper right corner that says Hazard Mitigation Plan, and you can click on that, and down at the bottom, if you scroll down, it talks about the Hazard Mitigation Plan is available for review. And you can click on draft documents and it brings you right to that, or you can, that address there, it brings you directly to the hazard mitigation plan, the draft plan. And you can review it. There are two means of commenting on that. There is a button you can click on the website, or there is an email to our project manager, Rob Planner, with Tetra Tech that you can write individual comments to. And these will all be reviewed and then put together and added to the plan, whatever comments. Yes?
Just for clarification, you said that this has to go to City Council for approval, and it says it's going to the OES on June 29th. Does that go to OES before City Council approves?
Yes. So what happens is we send the final draft plan to California Office of Emergency Services, and they do a review. If they find something to be missing, they come back and say, we find this to be missing, you need to add this to the plan. If they don't, and they say, yes, this is meets all the requirements of a hazard mitigation plan, they forward that plan to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and they conduct a review. If they find everything to be in there, they write us back and say, this plan is to be approved pending adoption by City Council. So once City Council adopts the plan, then FEMA gives their final approval. It is an approved plan, and the city is then eligible to receive or to apply for grants through the Federal Emergency Management Agency for hazard mitigation.
What's the approximate time frame with the OES and FEMA review process?
It's supposed to be within 90 days.
Okay.
So there's just not really any point in returning surveys after this, because in 2 weeks it's all going, right?
If you want your comment to be put in, then you would do that within the 2-week time period prior to, I think I said the 28th. Review, take the survey within there, and then we're going to pull that information and put that in the plan. We're still adding things to the plan that people, if they want to comment or something, and working with EMD on any changes to the plan prior to sending it to the state. So yeah, you have 2 weeks.
Can I get the, oh, I can get this one. Okay.
Yeah, I'll send,
No,
we'll get it sent to
I
you.
can download it right there.
Okay.
You put it on the desktop.
Okay. So with that, any final questions? I don't want to hog the space of this meeting, the time. Okay.
Denise, thank you.
Thank you very much for letting me come and speak to you, and I hope you will think it's worthwhile to take that survey and to look at the plan and make some comments. It is a very large plan, so if you can't make it all the way through, we understand, but we would love for you to review certain sections that you find particularly interesting. If you can make it through the whole plan, that's great. And thank you very much again for letting me come and talk to you this morning.
Thank you, thank you. Denise, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Need to rush on. Bill?
Yeah.
We're going to get right in. May I request that if you ask questions of the next presenter, you use the microphone, please?
Send me your news. Gee, I don't know where to start after something like that. I mean, it's kind of, that's nerve-wracking, to say the least, especially when we realize that the fire department is going to be the only resource we have day one. We will not be able to get the National Guard and other agencies from other counties and so forth in here. That our own, who's going to have about 1,100 people on duty in any given day, maybe we'll be able to address 1% of the need. Which says we need to think some way where we can support that, some way we can fortify that, some way we can take on some responsibility.
Bill, that mic is active if you want to use it.
What's that?
That mic is active if you want to use it. The microphone.
The microphone?
That's active.
It's active?
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me back there okay?
Yeah.
Good, all right. Purpose of this section of the program is to start thinking about doing a strategic planning activity or session to figure out where we want to go. I don't know if you're like me, but anytime I hear somebody speak, I'd like to know what their credentials are, what their background and experience is, to know how hard I want to listen. Well, here's a little bit about me. Probably the most important thing up there is line 2, how to get in touch if you have any questions. But I have been involved in strategic planning, teaching it, doing it with IBM. Well, I worked for 30 years, systems architect. Started out as a programmer working on the Saturn Apollo moon mission. Probably the most fun thing I ever did in my 30 years. But since then, I've gotten very interested in developing civilian emergency response teams that can actually go out and do urban search and rescue types of mission under limited conditions where it is safe for civilians to do that. And I'm trying to figure out the keyboard here. Okay, here we go. I have developed civilian emergency response teams. Here's one of them. This is from my particular neighborhood. That's about half of our 40 members. Our mission is to train and equip civilians to go out and do what the fire department does on a limited basis, but give them enough education and training so that they can actually do it, actually go into homes, know when they can do forced entry, when they cannot, how they do it. Do rapid trauma checks on patients before moving them, figure out how to move them. Use advanced first aid taught at the equivalent of CERT level 3. How many people are familiar with CERT? Fire department CERT. Okay. How many know what level 3 is? Okay. My teams are trained at level 3. Okay. And about half the time it takes for the fire department to train to run through their level 1 program. One of the things that makes our teams, I hope, we haven't actually had an earthquake in which they would have been tested, but in field tests, one of the things that makes them effective is the fact that they do not have to count on memory from what they heard in class. They have a one-page checklist that they can follow to accomplish the job that's assigned to them. And it's called the Civilian Emergency Response Team Field Guidebook. I'll pass a copy of that around. The reason I'm showing you this is I'm going to use the strategic planning techniques that I use to come up with this program to teach you how to do strategic planning. And then we will go into doing some strategic planning if we have time, and I doubt it's going to be time because I'm supposed to have an hour and 45 minutes today and I've got an hour left. So we may get to the strategic planning part of it next week or next month. What is strategic planning? It is the process of selecting the best way to reach a goal. Every time I started one of these with Fortune 50 companies, immediately popped into my mind this scene from Alice in Wonderland, where Alice stumbles upon a Cheshire cat and says, "Mr. Cat, would you please tell me which path I should take from here?" The cat says, "Well, that depends a great deal on where you want to go." My destination, I don't yet really know. Well, then it doesn't matter much which way you go. So what does that tell us? Before we can do a plan, we have to know where we want to go, right? It's like going on vacation. You want to go on vacation and have some fun. You're going to go by car, train, or boat. Depends on where you're going, right? Okay. So first step is figuring out the goal. The terms that I'll be using are shown here. What is the goal? It is the destination. It's the thing we strive for. It may not be quantifiable, but it should be definable. What is an objective? Well, that's a step on reaching a goal. Why is this important in strategic planning? If we break the goal down into the steps required to reach it, then we can start thinking about the work involved in doing it and look for enablers, which are ready-made tools or conditions that we can then use to implement or to help us achieve an objective on our way to the goal. But along the way, we're going to encounter some inhibitors. These are roadblocks. Some of them are hard roadblocks. We can't get around. That kills that particular approach. Some we can circumvent if we have the right inhibitor. A strategy is just simply the path to get to the goal, using inhibitors that are available, using enablers that are available, and circumventing inhibitors. But before we can do any of this, we need to understand the environment in which we're going to work, which is the playing field. The goal planning process is a quantitative investigation of the following. The environmental factors that we have no control over, we just have to live with. Brainstorming possible goals, brainstorming possible returns. What are the enablers that are available? What inhibitors are we likely to encounter? And are there things that will just flat out block our progress on a particular path? And we have to then choose a different path. Here might be some examples of goals that we could look at. Do we want to train train or somehow ensure our constituents and our neighborhood councils survive the aftermath of an earthquake, where there's going to be no water and food in stores for a long time? Phones are going to be out, power is going to be out, you got to worry about heating, lighting, so forth. Or do we want to focus on having them actually survive the disaster itself, all right? Most emergency preparation that has been talked about in the city for the last 19,000 years comes out in booklets like this, and there's a zillion of booklets. Every time you turn around, there's another booklet. They are focused on one up there, surviving after the earthquake, all right? The fire department CERT program was the first one that came up with an attempt to say, how do you survive the earthquake itself, okay, or a disaster itself? But there's some things that can be done in addition to what are taught in the fire department CERT program that need to be considered, like hardening your home so you have the least amount of chance of being injured by it. That gets us to possible goal 3, saving lives, because you know as well as I do that maybe only 1 or 2% of the population actually heeds the advice that are giving out in things like this. Everybody picks one up, nobody reads one. Nobody actually does anything with it. So there's going to be a need for saving lives, right? There are going to be people left homeless. We need to think about, maybe that's a possible goal we could tackle. Do we want to somehow figure out how to provide shelters? Do we want to try to reduce property losses? Or do we just want to wait till it's all over with and assist in the recovery process? Or some combination of these. These are just examples, okay? This is not what I am promoting. These are examples. We're going to get your inputs at a later time. Okay. Once we have a goal in mind, then we need to think about a strategy, how to get there, right? It's like, strategy is, well, let me give you an example. Let's say your goal is to get a job in government. You want to work in state government, okay? Well, what's involved in doing that? To get a job, you got to get interviews. To get interviews, you got to get your name out there. So you probably have to send out some resumes. Those are 2 objectives. Well, can you measure how much work you're going to have to do to accomplish those first 2 objectives, which are steps to get to the goal of getting the job? Well, it takes about 10 interviews to get a job today, and it takes about 10 resumes to get an interview. So I've now quantified that I need to send out 100 resumes. That's all strategic planning is, all right? Breaking the problem down into small things that we can understand, estimating them, planning to do them, okay? Now, And so you send out your interviews, and you've got, you send out your resumes, and you've got an interview coming up next Monday. It's Friday afternoon, you're dusting off your suit, you're packing up your bags to go up to Sacramento, and somebody in state government calls and says, hey, we've just had an opening here. I know it's noon, but if you can get here before close of business today, I think you'll have the job. Uh-oh, I've just hit an inhibitor. Time. How do I get around the time inhibitor? I got to do a strategic plan. What are my enablers to get from LA to Sacramento? I got a car, but that takes 6 hours, and I got 5 hours to get there. I can take an airplane, but is there an inhibitor? Is there cost involved? Do I have the money to fly? I've been out of work for a year. There's a train. Takes more time, costs less than an airplane, will get me there in time. That's my strategy. Okay? That's all strategic planning is. Breaking the problem down, looking at the enablers you have, the inhibitors you have, the things that are stepping stones to get to the goal, and then picking a combination of those. That's your strategy. Okay. Example strategies that we might consider here. Let's count on the fire department to handle all the incidents. Right? We're here because we know that ain't going to happen. Right? And I was very glad that I think it was Joanne confirmed an analysis that I did with some fire department battalion people, captains, that showed that on the golden day, the day in which a lot of people won't live through, our fire department alone will be able to tackle about 1% of the need. I will show you that model if you want to see it. Another strategy then we must consider is civilians could assist, maybe civilians could assist the fire department in some house and let them continue to handle the incidents, the dangerous jobs, but is there something we can do? Or do civilians actually need to train to actually handle some of the lower risk incidents? And let the fire department handle some of the others. Again, the examples, we're going to let you come up with some of the other ideas when we get to that point. All right, first step on doing strategic planning is to understand the environment in which we must play. So let's look at the environment. How many were here for Northridge? How long did the shaking last?
Seemed like forever.
I have a hearing loss problem.
Use the mic. Everybody's got a mic.
Just yell it out.
90 seconds?
90 seconds.
7.
7 seconds? That is actually correct. The actual shaking from the quake lasted 7 seconds, but it continued for a total of 20 seconds in some areas because the ground was soft. Most of LA Basin is sediment soil washed down from the mountains. And it is softer and therefore shaking lasts longer there. But the actual quake itself generated 7 seconds of shaking. Let's look at what the shaking is going to be like that is predicted by U.S. Geologic Survey if the San Andreas erupts with a 7.9 or greater earthquake. This is a simulation that I put together. So you're watching TV. Is there any sound coming out of this thing? No. Sorry about that. On my computer, you get the noise. And it's horrific.
Just check the volume control if the speakers are turned on. Should be something.
Yeah, your speaker control.
Does anybody know how to get sound out of this thing?
Let me see. Let me see.
The sound is on. It's all the way
Whoops, I'm hitting the wrong.
Just be aware of the length of time. This is time at what USGS says the shaking will last.
Try
Yeah,
to volume
it's just not-
control on the
it's not-
far right
Yeah,
corner
there
by the
Yeah,
time.
it's just not coming through. That's on the end. It's just not good.
No. Interesting.
Is there a cord that hooks up to this, to the computer?
It's probably a mixer, it's not mixed in to the
Yeah.
sound system.
Okay, so it will be noisy and.
Yeah.
The sound is deafening. These were shot in Tokyo after the 9.0 earthquake in Sendai, 200 miles away. The earthquake predicted here will not be as strong, but we're 50 miles from the San Andreas. So maybe this is similar to the amount of movement. They are predicting 6-foot shaking downtown, like that. They're predicting as many as 10 of the tall buildings will fall.
Question?
Yes.
Is this video available?
Hang on, let me shut this off.
Speak up.
Is this video available, or is this your personal video?
It's my personal video that I've sandwiched together, but I'd be glad to send it to you. In fact, I will put it on the website.
That's only if the San Andreas erupts, it's not if it triggers Puente Hills as well. At the same time.
You got to yell or use a mic.
That's only if the San Andreas goes off and it does not trigger Puente Hills as well.
That's right. In fact, since this was made, since the USGS predictions were made, and I will share those with you, and actually use them in the strategic planning, the numbers that they've come up with, to weight things. They have now discovered that there is another fault right underneath the basin that may do more damage. The one she talked about this morning as being the worst from a financial standpoint, that'd be the Wilshire fault because of all the high rises. But the one in terms of most damage to area-wide is considered now to be the Newport-Inglewood fault that USGS has just discovered links up with another fault at a low level down a couple of miles that runs all the way and connects with another fault runs all the way to San Diego. So it's about as long as the San Andreas. And that runs right down the middle of Los Angeles, between downtown and the west side. That could do more damage to us than the San Andreas. Okay. Here are the numbers from U.S. Geologic Survey in terms of incidents. 1,600 major fires, some of them taking out entire blocks because there's going to be nobody there to stop them. $1,500 buildings will collapse. 300,000 buildings will be significantly damaged, and in which we'll have to go in, search for people, and get them out before they do collapse in subsequent aftershocks. 1,800 people killed immediately. 53,000 needing casualties, critical injuries that need to get to the hospital emergency centers. About 1 million out of our 4 million people are going to need first aid. And 250, I'm sorry, this number may be wrong, ignore that until I give you the real number. This is countywide, these numbers are countywide. And 5,000 people homeless needing shelters. Let's take a look at each one of these. Major fires. Obviously, some people are trying to do what they can as civilians by filling up buckets of water and throwing, but of course it had no effect. So the fire department has to handle the major fires. What we could do as civilians is to handle the little fires before they become major fires. And that's going to be something we'll talk about as a strategy. Of those 1,800 collapsed buildings, there's probably nothing civilians can do. That's a fire department responsibility. They have the equipment and the training to know when it's safe to go under one of those and when it is not safe. So that's kind of off limits, but we'll have to count on the fire department. Heavily damaged buildings like this is also a fire department only type job, not something that we could think about setting as a goal. However, let's look at the fire department capability. There are 1,100 fire personnel on duty at any one time. About 1,000 of those are paramedics and firefighters. We only have 273 apparatus, fire trucks, fire engines, rescue ambulances that can be used to transport those. And if they carry 4 people apiece, we can just barely get the 1,000 people out there working. I did a model using their deployment protocols, and it came out that of all those incidences, they're going to be able to handle about 1.1%, and they will be focused on the collapsed buildings in, depending on the time of day. If it happens at night, they will go to concentrate on high-rise residential. If it happens during the day, they will be, hospitals are always #1 on the list, okay? They want to get the hospitals operating to be able to handle the influx of those 53,000 people that are going to need emergency room care. The second will be, if it's during the day, it's going to be businesses and schools. If it's at night, it's going to be high-rise residential. Single-family home neighborhoods are at the bottom of the list, okay? They will probably not get to those until day 90. Not weeks, months ahead. Now this assumes, my model assumes that they're doing all of this by themselves, which is not going to be the case. There will be other agencies coming in, but I don't know how to estimate that. So anyway, keep that in mind. Day 1 is the day when, if you don't get to somebody that's in need, they're probably going to die. Okay? They'll be tackling 1%. But there are other incidences that USGS did not include in their estimates. Things like that continue to kill people. Things like down power lines that people can walk into. You don't have to touch a down power line. If you get within 10 or 20 feet of it, the ground is energized to the point that it can electrocute you. Ruptured gas mains and ruptured water mains. I'll show you how that can kill people. Unsafe roads, hazardous material leaks, which is kind of the equivalent of a terrorist attack in terms of the way we would respond to it, at least the way I train people to respond. And light and moderately damaged buildings are also things that civilians could tackle. Not the heavily damaged ones, that's fire department territory, but we could handle the light and the moderate ones before they become heavily damaged in a series of subsequent aftershocks. And we could tackle small fires before they become the 1,600 big major alarm fires. Okay. Down power lines. What can we do there? Simply cordon off the area around where the power line touches the ground. If you keep 30 feet away from where that point is, you're totally safe. If it's pouring rain, the ground's wet, you might want to stay 50 feet away from it. But we could do that as civilians. Small fires. Small fires are easily managed. That one can be managed simply by throwing a towel over the top of the, whatever that is, a wok I think it is, smothering the flames. Or we could, if we don't put out the small fires, then they start growing to big fires. This is a scene from Northridge, okay, where a small fire turned into a big fire and took out not just one house, every house on the block. That's what we're up against. Fire destroyed more property in the 1906 San Francisco fire than the Shaking did. And it is predicted to do the same here. If we can train, maybe one of our strategies is to train civilians, our constituents, how to use fire extinguishers and encourage them to buy the largest fire extinguishers they can carry. Maybe we can do as NCs is set up a special deal with some fire extinguisher manufacturers to get them at wholesale rather than retail. Something to consider. Okay? If the fire does get out of control, it's not stopped by the 98% of people who are not going to heed what we're telling them to do, then a fire this size can still be handled by civilians that are trained to do this without any special equipment other than a large fire extinguisher and working in teams. Okay? So that's a possible goal we could look at. Even a fully involved building can be handled by civilians. We can't put it out, but we might be able to protect the structures on either side of this thing. This thing works. Okay. There's a structure here, and there's a structure over there. Is there something we could do to protect those structures? So even though we can't suppress the fire here because we don't have the water power, what can we do over there? Well, there are some things. One thing you can do is, if there is water power, water pressure at the hydrants, for $1,500, you can buy enough 2.5-inch supply line, a wide 1.5-inch attack lines and nozzles that can, with an 85-pound pressure at the hydrant, cast a water stream about 75 to 85 feet and keep the side of this building cool and the side of that building cool, so the fire in this building does not spread to the buildings on either side. That's a very doable thing. And in fact, maybe we can talk the city into giving us some of their old fire hoses, all right, that are gotten to the point that they don't want to trust them and dragging them across pavement. But it does require having water pressure there. There is, however, another solution, and it's called the compressed air foam system. Now, this is a full self-contained unit. It's got like a 30-gallon water tank on it, into which you add a chemical that ends up producing 20 gallons of foam for every 1 gallon of water. So you've multiplied the fire suppression capability of water 20 times. And you can drive this thing with scuba tanks. So you can find out who in the neighborhood's got scuba tanks, and even though this is limited, maybe one refill of this can only put foam on one side of the roof of one building, and you have to get 30 gallons of water out of somebody's hot tub and put in another scuba tank here to do the next building. It is a possibility. And you can buy these things for like $8,500. I'm working on getting one for my neighborhood right now. So there are things that we could do. Another hazard is ruptured gas main pipelines. Well, there's not a whole lot that we can do with that other than evacuate the people near the rupture when it's just pushing dirt up in the air before it ignites and causes a fire, which, as you see here, took out that home, and that home. So there are things civilians can do that can assist and maybe offload the fire department or at least save some lives. A ruptured water main. These are going to be all over the place when we have a major earthquake. Now that doesn't look bad, does it? All I did was blow the top off of the manhole cover here. Now wait a minute, what's this stuff here? What is that? Is this an English-speaking audience?
Sewage.
What it is dirt, right? So if we don't cordon this off, this is going to happen.
it's going to end up creating what looks like just a puddle of water in the road that's a few feet deep, or maybe 10 to 15 to 20 feet deep. Okay? This actually happened in front of my house, or right next to my house. All right? My truck almost went into it. And all of this can be saved by simply cordoning off. But in addition to cordoning off, you've got to figure out how you're going to reroute traffic. All right? So you cordon it off in a way that it reroutes traffic. The guidebook that I'm going to share with you later, what happened to it?
You passed it around.
Oh, passed it around, okay. Has a one-page check sheet for how to handle that, and how to set up the detours, how to plan. Yes, sir.
Could you go back 3 slides?
Go back, where?
1, 2, and 3. So you have a ruptured power main. You said there's dirt there. So what you're doing is basically, what's happened with the dirt, it's flowing towards the ruptured power main, and then it's going to have enough water where it created the sinkhole, correct?
Yeah, it's there. This is dirt being washed out of the ground underneath the pavement by a ruptured water main.
So you cordon off area where it looks like
Get in
where
the
the
mic.
water ends. Pardon?
Take the mic.
I'm Mike.
No, take the microphone. Turn it on.
Thank you. So my question is, where you can see there's lots of water, the dirt that's being pushed out, it looks like where there's a pole over there, that's the area you start to cordon off the area so people don't go to where the pool is. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is underneath this pavement is a big hole.
Oh, I understand. I'm just saying how far, when you say cordon off, which is on, I guess, the next slide. So you
What
cordon
I
off
would do
to
is-
the top?
I would go down to the end of this block and cordon it off down there. So people do not come up here
At all.
and then find that they can't get past that point. You've got a whole street gem of cars that can't come around. Right. So when you want to cordon off an area maybe from sidewalk to sidewalk. I've never seen one of these sinkholes wider than the street itself. But the water mains are generally right in the middle of the street or very close to the middle of the street. But you want to think about how do I divert traffic so I don't get them in here and then captured. So you find a place, like let's say the street was right here, then I'd put the barricade up right across the area. You can do that just with tape. Okay? Just string tape across there. But I got to tell you, I have babysit. I'm on the fire department's call-out team, like Patrick is here. And we go out and sit down power lines during windstorms, and we will have cordoning tape off, danger, do not cross, and people just walking down, pick it up, walk underneath it, and excuse me, sir, are you trying to commit suicide? What? Yes. You see that tape over there you just went under? There's a reason for that tape, and it's because right over there is an active power line. Now, if you take one more step, I'm not guaranteeing you will survive. So turn around very slowly, take very small steps with one foot touching the other one, and back your ass out of here. It's unbelievable how stupid people are. But that's it. Okay, moving on. People are injured not only in buildings that collapse, and not only in heavily damaged buildings. People are injured in buildings that look damaged but are still standing straight up, which we can go into before too many more aftershocks occur. People are injured in buildings that don't even look damaged. If the movement of them, the earthquake, was enough to knock them off their feet, but the vibration frequency of the earthquake did not match the resonant frequency of the home. Now, this is getting into science, but I'm saying just in a nutshell. Earthquakes produce three different frequencies. There's a very long frequency, It's called the L frequency, then there's the S frequency, and then there's some other frequency, and I can't remember the name of it, I think the M frequency. And if the frequency hits the innate frequency or resonant frequency of a building, the damage is exponentially worse. For instance, most single-family homes survive earthquakes very well because the frequency that the earthquakes put out does not match the frequency of a single-story structure. But they do match the resonant frequency of a 2 and 3 and 4-story structure. 2 and 3 worse than the 4-story structure. Once you get beyond 3, they vibrate more to the long frequencies, and that's more this type of movement rather than this stuff. So that's why you'll see one home doesn't look like it's damaged at all right next to another home that just looks like it's falling apart. It's because the frequencies did not upset one where it did match the resonant frequency of another home. But here's the point. Here is the, I've read through the epidemiology survey studies done on the Northridge earthquake, and this is the pyramid of injury. There were 27 people that were dead on arrival. 6 more died in the hospital. 9 were immediates. 129 were what we call delayed. This is incorrect by the way we understand it. It was a trauma-related event, but it was not a critical trauma-related event. They called it that. All right. But then look at what happened. People that needed first aid and could be released, 8,000, 16,000, a total of 221,000. That's just from Northridge, all right? Now, this was a Band-Aid, a scratch, all right? This was a burn or a major wound. This was, I don't know, details. I have to go back and read it again. But this is kind of the range of damages of buildings. Most of these occurred in the deaths occurred in buildings that did collapse. A couple of them occurred when somebody drove off the freeway section that had collapsed. One of those was a heart attack from stress. Moderately damaged buildings occurred for a lot of these, but then there were some of these in both moderate and light. Now, a moderate is one that looks damaged but still stands straight up. Well, it's not doing this. Right? It can be doing this, in my opinion, from my experience as a once volunteer rescue worker. As long as the walls are at right angles of the floors, to me, it's safe to enter. But if it's this way, it is not safe to enter. Okay? The structural shear diaphragms have been broken, and the building could collapse into the wind. But we still had people in lightly damaged buildings that needed to be rescued. Civilians to tackle them. Okay. Here's what a moderately damaged building looks like. It will have broken walls, cracks in the walls will be visible, but as you can see, it is standing straight up. On the other side, this is a building that you could say is moderately damaged because decorative work has been damaged, but the structure itself, you can see the building is walls are right angles with the floors. This one came off its foundation. To me, the fire department says this is off limits to certain level 1 people. I have no problem going into a building that's off its foundation as long as there's still right angles between the floors and the walls, as long as it's not wrecked.
That
the shear
building
panels
is
are
marked.
still in place.
That building is marked X, you do not go in that thing.
What's that?
That building is marked X, you do not go in it.
Well, it won't be marked X. That's true. If it's marked X, you don't go in it. Right. By the time my team gets to it, we'll be the first ones there, and we will mark it X or slash or whatever. Okay. Lightly damaged building basically will have broken windows, but no real major cracks in the walls. Here's another example of a lightly damaged building. You see the damage?
Yeah, chimney's gone. Chimney is gone.
Yeah, chimneys.
Chimney is gone.
The chimney is gone. Yeah, chimney is gone. That is absolutely correct. This happened in Northridge. It also happened in my neighborhood. And luckily, with the earthquake happening at 4 a.m., there weren't too many people in their living rooms around their fireplaces. Otherwise, there would have been some injuries from just fireplaces collapsing. Okay. Here's what most of the damage in a lightly damaged building, the one that looks okay on the outside, the inside can still be trashed. So people can be trapped under fallen debris, toppled furniture, so forth and so on, cut by flying or broken glass, and have broken hips from just falling on themselves. One goal we might adopt would be to investigate these kind of buildings to see if there are injured or trapped people, and if so, get them out. People that live alone are going to be very susceptible to this kind of damage. Okay. So, looking at the incidents that USGS has predicted, the first two, the fire department has to handle. Maybe there's something we could do with the bottom four. Okay. And there's something that we can do with the ones that the USGS did not estimate, but we know are going to occur and are going to continue to kill people just because they're hazards that most people don't understand and they could get too close or drive into them and so forth. All right. But of course, they have to have the right instructions to know how to do that. We'll talk about what's available. Now, there's another inhibitor here, or an inhibitor, and it's called time. Time is always an inhibitor in almost any goal-reaching activity, and it has to be accounted for in almost any strategy that you might think of as to how you might reach the goal. Here's kind of my rule of fours. A person who is burning is going to die in under 4 minutes. If they're buried under chest-compressing weight or air-sealing debris, they will die of suffocation in 4 minutes. If they are bleeding severely, they will die in under 4 minutes. If they are not breathing, they will die in 4 minutes. Okay? Let's keep that in mind. These are what we call the critically injured. Okay? An hour is about as long as a small fire will stay a small fire in a house. And it can get to be a big fire in a lot less time. But houses are designed with what's called 1-hour fire barriers. Drywall, 5/8-inch drywall, or inch of plaster on the walls will pretty much contain a fire, the average fire that you find in a house, for about an hour before it starts spreading into the interior wood frame wall. So that's a max. A person who is in shock, from shock meaning that the vital organs are not getting enough oxygen because of enough blood flow for a variety of different reasons. They've got lost blood, they've got a pinched nerve in the neck, and they've got distributive shock, they've got obstructive shock, hypovolemic shock. They can die within 4 hours. In 24 hours, people that are injured and trapped in bad weather can die of explosion. Can. These are not hard and fast numbers, they're just relatives. But they give us something to think about when we start selecting strategies. You live with about 4 days without water. Otherwise you're dying of dehydration. Maybe you can get to 6 for some people. You live for about 4 weeks without food. Why do I care about that? People living alone, trapped in a house, could expire because they can't get the food supplies. So, things to think about. Okay. This begs, in my mind, a two-phased approach to rescue work. And I'm going to call them right now Phase 1 and Phase 2. And I will show you what characteristics that I believe make them different. Okay. During Phase 1, During phase 1 response, we operate in the 4-minute critical life-saving window. Phase 2 operates in the golden day, 24-hour golden day. So, if we've got 4 minutes to save a person's life who's buried, bleeding, burning, and not breathing, where are we going to be able to do that? Wherever you are when it hits. And that's it. That's it. You're not going to go wait and go form a team and start search and rescue operations. It'll take you 10 minutes to get out of your own house. So the only place that we're actually going to be saving lives of people buried, bleeding, burning, or not breathing by opening an airway is people in this room, if it happens right now. So it's wherever you are. And wherever you are, in the building you're already in a building, so you don't have to worry about forcing entry. Forced entry is not discussed in fire department CERT training. For a reason. You don't need it. If you realize that fire department CERT 1 is about what you do in a mass casualty environment, like this one right here, where you've got more people than rescuers. That's the whole program was set up for that. So a lot of CERT instructors have lost sight of that, and they confuse the students by talking about search and rescue. And people think, oh, that means I go kick down doors and go into people's houses. No, they talk about search and rescue only to show that in the building you're already in, there may be some voids you could look into to find survivors. That's the whole purpose of CERT 1's discussion of search and rescue. So, what are the patients? During phase 1, it's either family members if I'm at home, or co-workers, and I should have added other people attending the restaurant or the theater or in the same mall that I'm in, or in the meeting I'm in. In phase 2 is when we start into other buildings, okay, where you really need to know real urban search and rescue to go help your neighbors. Wait a minute. If I'm injured. If there isn't somebody trained to do phase 2 work, I'm a dead duck. So when you start thinking about strategies and saying, wait a minute, this is way too much work for us to tackle as NCs, change others to you. Because it is during phase 2 where you get saved if you're injured. Keep that in mind. What are the activities in phase 1? Basic life-saving intervention for those burning. Extinguish them, smother the flames, roll them over. If they're buried, get the debris off of the face so they can breathe, and the weight off of the chest so that they can take a breath. Bleeding. Stop the rapid bleeding by ripping off your belt, making a tourniquet, cinching it tight. Not breathing. This is where opening an airway helps. All right? It's about the only place that it is worth attempting. Suppress, once you've got them over the critical 4-minute period, they're still alive, then go worry about suppressing small fire. During phase 2, we need to find the incidents first. All right? We're not looking at who's injured in the building I'm in. I got to find people that are injured in other buildings in the neighborhood. So I have to do a damage survey. And then I have to do real urban search and rescue. Find the people, extract them without injuring them, and then treat their injuries, get them to hospitals as quickly as possible if they are in need of that. And now small fires have become big fires, so maybe I need to think about containing large fires. We won't have the power to suppress them, but maybe we could contain or protect the other building so they don't wipe out the whole block. Yes, sir.
Talking about your 2 phases, the Map Your Neighborhood program considers phase 1 up to an hour, realistically, by the time you can actually start phase 2.
Yeah. That's probably true, right? People are going to die in 4 minutes,
Right.
but you won't be able to start phase 2 until people have done whatever they can at their own home and then get their gear together and get someplace where they can
Right.
invest it. So, I totally agree. I've run a drill in our neighborhood, and it was 30 minutes before people really, a significant number of people showed up at our command. Who are the actors? In phase one, it's the individual. In phase two, you can't do this on your own. You have to work in teams. Patient extraction during phase one. The only thing you have available are your two hands, so it's manual carries, drags, and carries. This is what they teach in CERT. During phase two, you can't use this. If you go in and drag somebody out of a building still standing hours after the earthquake, by the same limbs that prevent them from walking out on their own, what's going to happen to you? You're going to get sued, right? So you have to know how to use backboards and stretchers and the 4 or 5 different ways to get a patient on a backboard and stretcher, depending upon the type of injury they have sustained. First aid, phase one, basic. You've got no equipment. Do whatever you can, right? Phase two, you have now, if you take somebody out of a building, you now own them until you get them to a hospital. So you better know advanced first aid and have the equipment to provide them, which is airway suction, BVMs, emergency oxygen. If you have nurses in your neighborhood, saline IV kits for those that have lost a lot of blood. You're not required to do that part, but you are maintaining their airway. Transport, patient transport. Phase one, car, if they can sit, if they can't sit, spinal injuries, then you have to wait to go get help. In phase two, since you're working in teams, you have backboards, you can use trucks and vans.
You can use doors too. You can use doors.
No.
Yes, you can.
You ever tried to strap a person to a door? You take a door off, a door is wider than a doorway. See that door there? It extends further than this. You can't get that doorway through here without doing this. So you need backboards, scoop stretchers, even cloth stretchers. Blanket carries work better than doors. If you've got enough people, you can carry somebody with spinal injury in a blanket. If you have enough. Okay. What are some of the possible strategies that come to mind after looking at the environment? Then, well, let's look at, can we assist the fire department in some fashion? Maybe by just reporting incidents to them. Let's look at that as a strategy. Could we, since phase one has to be done by individuals in the building you're already in, we need to train constituents to handle phase one. We can't do that ourselves. You've got to do it for the people where you are. So that should be a strategy. Train constituents to save lives of at least their family or co-workers, or we could also train them on how to deal with a mass casualty incident, like here or restaurant, theater, and so forth. That is really what the fire department CERT program was originally designed to do. That's why they teach, the first thing they teach is triage. Because if you got 100 people, you got to find who should I spend my time with. So that's where triage makes sense as the first step. It does not make sense if your wife is on fire or your child is buried. You worry about the severity later on. First, life-saving intervention. Another strategy we look at, maybe we should think about building teams to go save others in the neighborhood, right? After that first window is closed. And maybe that can't start for an hour, but we've got 23 hours left in the golden day. That's phase two. Wait a minute. Saving others? Do I really care? My house has just been hit. I need to pick up the dishes, get my favorite models and DVDs back in their place. I don't care about others. I'm not going to build a team. What if you're the one injured? That team is to save me. That's why I spent 20 years and the last 3 years training teams, because I'm getting to be an old man. And I want somebody to come save my butt. And I'm counting on the young people in my neighborhood to do that, and I'm training them to do that. Okay. Let's start to look at strategies. One strategy I had up there, we call it strategy A, assist the fire department by reporting incidents to them. Okay? This is the format I'm going to be using, and you might want to make yourself, we don't have enough time today to get to starting to do real brainstorming. So I'm basically going to be able to finish the presentation, and then we'll pick it up later. And maybe if you would send this out to everybody, at the end there are some forms that look like this, but blank, where you can start putting your ideas in. But let me do a couple to see how it works. Do we help the fire department by reporting incidents to them? Do we have any ready-made tools that would help us implement that strategy? Radios. Ham radios, DMRS radios to be used by people that finding incidents, report that to the neighborhood council command center, and then we use a ham to get down to communicate to the emergency operations center. Okay? We have to break down the goal into its sub-objectives or mini goals to really be able to think through this operation. So we have to train people to do search, to survey damages, and then we have to communicate those to the emergency operations center. Well, we've got radios that will help with both of those, so I'll put a 1 in there. Now, are there any enablers in addition to the ready-made tools enablers? Well, yeah. The Auxiliary Communication Services has already figured out the frequencies that could be used to make these communications. Where from the neighborhood, I use this frequency to talk to somebody, an ACS member at the battalion headquarters, who then has the frequency to communicate with an ACS member at the bureau level, who then has the frequency to communicate with the people here in this building. All right? So, that's great. That work's already been done. Are there any inhibitors? Well, one is ACS needs volunteers. They don't have enough people to cover all of the places that you would need the stepping stones to get the message down here. So, gets a -1. Another problem is the fire department, as soon as it hits, they're going to take all their equipment out of the fire station in case it collapses, and then they're going to get in it and drive around to check freeway to make sure that there's nothing collapsed and people are going to drive off. Then they're going to go to the hospitals and so forth and so on. They're going to see incidents themselves, and they can communicate over their 800 radios. Everything they have is battery backed up and generator backed up. So they're going to be able to spot all the enough incidents to keep them busy for days, and they'll be fully deployed within 5 minutes. So I give this strategy, I take off a half for that strategy. So the net is 1.5 in terms of return I get. Okay. Since ACS doesn't have enough volunteers to actually man all the places, look at another option. Option B to implement this strategy, assist fire department by reporting incidences via runners. Okay, I still have to do survey damages. I can teach people how to do that. How do I get the information to the EOC? That's a long way away from the valley, right? So that has been blocked. I'm not sure if that's the word blocked. So that's the way we do these things. Now, let's look at another strategy. Be train constituents to save the lives of their family members, since they are the only ones that can do that in the 4-minute life-saving window. If they're not at home, they save their co-workers. Do we have any ready-made enablers that we could use to teach those skills? I thought of 3. One of them is the fire department has a program called Disaster Awareness Class. It's about 3 hours long, and it covers the types of disasters where they go in and talk about, well, we can have earthquakes, we can have fires, wildland fires, house fires, we can have floods, terrorist attacks, and they go through maybe a half dozen or a dozen different types of things that could go wrong to get you to pay attention. Do I need to know all of that stuff to know how to recover for it? No. But to get people to do something, sometimes you got to scare them. And that program is great for doing that. All right. But it does go into teaching them how to suppress a small fire. And it talks about the supplies that they need to stop. It doesn't spend a lot of time about what you can do to your home or office to mitigate the hazards to reduce your chance of becoming a victim. But that's something that we ought to make sure that it's covered with our constituents. And we also need to teach them basic life-saving skills. It doesn't do that at all. It counts on their Community Emergency Response Team program, the 17.5-hour program, to do this part of it here. And I guess if I did this chart again, I would say if it's basic life-saving skills, it would get a full X there, not just a half an X. I have a program that I put together before I knew this existed that doesn't talk about the types of disasters, but it does cover each of these very thoroughly, and it's about the same length. And it starts off with that video that I showed you earlier today with sound. All right, because it really gets attention. That video was 3 minutes and 20 seconds, which is what they predict the shaking will last. Not 20 seconds. Now, before, option C, by the way, pass this around. This is the handout for my seminar. And I will send that out to you guys. Oh, you can get it on my website. Hilltophero.org. Hilltop Hero. Hero is Hilltop Emergency Response Organization. It's hilltophero.org.com. Go to the documents page and you'll find some sample newsletters to get attention if you want to send those out. You'll find my seminar presentation. You'll find the handout for the Survive the Big One seminar. You also see a sample of the guidebook. Not complete, it's all the pages, but it is a demo copy. I've already had some government agencies trying to steal this, so I
didn't take a look at that.
Yeah, I had to cover it up, part of it. But anyway, you can see what's in it. Now, if we're talking about phase 2, which is what we're on now, I think I've already covered it. The 2 programs that are, there are actually 3 programs that are possible here. One is Fire Department's Community Emergency Response Team program, 17.5 hours. Red Cross is Emergency Medical Response, and then my full program, which is about 30 hours of training, but I don't require everybody to sit through all of it. In other words, it's kind of, in my mind, ridiculous to make grandmothers sit through search and rescue training. Okay? It is also ridiculous to make strong burly guys who faint at the sight of blood sit through medical training. So you sign up, you fill out a survey to get into my group, and you list what you can do, and you get placed. Anybody can serve in the command center as long as they're organized and think under pressure and can document well. Those that can drive and walk for 2 hours at a time and knock on doors can be on the Danny survey team. To be on the search and rescue, you have to be able to pick up 60 pounds and carry it 60 feet. To be on the medical team, you have to be non-hemophobic. So, and I show you enough pictures of gory injuries, and they kind of migrate to their appropriate teams. So, okay. Which I've talked through that enough. Most people have been through CERT training, so I'll talk about that. How successful has community emergency response team been? By the 1994 earthquake, 18,000 people had gone through the training program. How many showed up? About a dozen. In my neighborhood, we had 50 people that had gone through CERT training. They had purchased $30,000 worth of tents, cots, blankets, first aid supplies, generators, flood lamps to light up the whole neighborhood. And out of that 50, how many showed up at the command center? One. I was not involved with the group in '94. I took the training in '95. After I went through it, some things didn't make sense to me. I went back. I just retired from IBM. And I took the CERT program through the same disciplines that I had used with Fortune 50 companies on strategic planning, business and information process modeling, and came up with a program that I now teach. And I went around and interviewed, part of that process, I went around and interviewed the people who had CERT teams prior to at Northridge. One lady in my neighborhood who came out, I said, what happened? I don't know. I went up to the command center at 4:30 and I was ready to do triage on anybody who came up. If they can walk to the command center on their own, what triage category are they? The action plan taught in FEMA CERT fits one scenario, this room, mass casualty incident. There are 3 other scenarios. My program, I'm going to skip that. In the interest of time, we're running out. Lynn, if you will send this out, I'll skip all the rest of this stuff because it's kind of self-explanatory. Strategy D, shelter the homeless. There's some thoughts on that. Strategy E, aid in recovery by providing information. Here's some sources of information that I think are going to be, these are what needs to be objectives for that strategy. In other words, types of information needed. These are sources of it, ready-made, that might enable us to fulfill that need. Okay, implementation. Also have to think about how do you implement things. Newsletters, NC classes for those strategies. Maybe, I think Bob one time said, had a great idea. Was it Bob? Yeah, what's your name? Bob, okay, got it right. Public service announcements on TV. That may be the only way to reach most of the people, right? But how are we going to get the stations to do that? And then I stumbled on Channel 35. It's a city channel. Maybe they could put some of these things out there and educate the public. If we can, send out in our newsletters to watch Channel 35 on a certain day during these hours. Okay. There are always other things to think about, and that's equipment costs. Anytime you do a strategy, you want to look at return and your cost, and the return per unit of cost, or marginal cost. Here's a few things that I've put up from my experience. And then here are some worksheets that you can use when you define. First, go through, identify a goal, try to break it down into objectives. Objectives again are just the stepping stones to get to the goal that you can quantify. Break it down enough so you can understand the problem. I like to think of the inhibitors and then think of the enablers. Before any of that, you need ready-made tools, which are enablers, that I can use to implement the strategy. And then define the strategy of saying, strategy X, I am going to try to reach this goal by a method, define it using a certain combination of enablers. So if you write it out that way, then it's, you probably understand it well enough to bring it in here and we talk about it next time, if Lynn gives me the time, whatever that meeting is. Okay, I'm out of time. Didn't get my full time, but as the guy said, hey, it's Saturday, nice warm day, the fish are biting. One time, I was in a group like this, and people started leaving. And it was a Friday afternoon, actually. And there was one guy who stood in the back of the room, and he was sticking it out. I said, rather than quitting, I'm going to continue and give my entire presentation on this day when I would rather be out doing something else. And he stayed through the whole thing. And when he got to the end of it, I went up and said, I want to thank you very much for staying and listening. It was worth, spending the afternoon here doing that. And I said, what did you get out of it? I said, well, I really wasn't listening. I'm the next speaker. Okay, Lynn, it's your meeting.
Okay, well, our first, we got started a little late. Our first speaker was supposed to be about half hour, and the questions we went on. So I'm going to invite Bill back. I will get this stuff out because I think this is very important, because what we're looking at is what are the goals we're going to look at in the various environments that we can imagine, that we can then take out to neighborhood councils. We've seen some of that today. Hopefully we'll get a third of the neighborhood councils interested. As one of the things we pointed out, one of our goals last time, get them to get an emergency preparedness committee. Have them bring things up at their meetings when they meet, have reports and such. That these are all the kind of goals we're looking at, because we know what's going to, well, we don't really know. We can imagine what's going to happen. One of the things that wasn't covered by that hazard mitigation, as I recall, it's the San Gregorio Pass that they're a little concerned about, because through that pass comes LA's water, our gas, our oil, and one thing a lot of people don't talk about is there's this large pipe that's called fiber. And that's the thing that connects our portion of the internet to a whole lot of other people on the internet. And if they're right, the San Andreas Let's Go, there's going to be as much as a 30-foot movement, okay? Which means that that tunnel that the water comes through is going to be 30 feet apart, and everything else is going to be 30 feet apart. So those are the things we're going to have to talk about. That's the major, but what can we do to mitigate what happens in our neighborhood after we take care of the people in our house, if it happens when we're home. And of course, all of us who are into emergency things like communication are absolutely convinced that we're going to be at least 30 miles away from wherever it is we expect to be when the earthquake hits, unless it's at 4:30 in the morning. So,
we have a little bit of public comment.
Okay, Bob, we've got a couple of minutes. We're going to get him back, and then we're going to move around. Okay. Bob, comment.
Okay. I've already started talking to my neighborhood council and the Harbor Alliance just to point out that we will be starting this program. And the question then is, what's the program actually going to be? And what I've heard today is a sort of an alternative where Bill Pope suggests that he can do in 3 hours effectively what the CERT would do in 17 hours, except more effectively. Is that the case? Well, that's a good question, and I'm willing to entertain it. And I think that this organization, this NCEPA, needs to start making decisions. If the decision is to adopt this program, the question is, how does one scale it up to, let's say, training 4,000 people? That's 0.1% of just the residents of the city of Los Angeles. It's less than that for the county. But suppose we wanted to scale it up to 4,000. How do we do that? Do you charge to come and bring this? Can you train another 10 or 20 people to teach this class? That sort of question. I've not had a reasonable sounding response from the city government in terms of scaling up CERT. So I'd kind of like to see us get started, because the earthquake could happen. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter what we do.
Okay.
I'm Linda Pruitt from Lake Balboa Neighborhood Council, and I just wanted to let you all know that we're doing a pet preparedness class with medical and CPR, et cetera, tomorrow at the Flyaway Bus Terminal upstairs in the community room from 9 until 4. The cost of the class is $30, $20 of which goes for the book that you will get, and you will also get a pet preparedness kit when you leave. So if you have any questions about it, or if you think you'd like to attend, please let me know.
In terms of Bill Pope's class, I believe that additional training is always good, but the CERT training is standardized, it is accepted by the city, it is accepted by the fire department. The fire department knows if somebody's got a CERT vest on, what they've gone through. So taking the additional training in place of CERT, I think, is not a good idea, but I like the additional training in addition to CERT.
It's your choice.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually offered this to the fire department, free. And
You can't change the fire department.
No. I will say, yeah, I will say that you've got bills, you've got things like SOS. That's where some of the people are today, as a matter of fact. They're at the SOS in the Valley with a couple of their workshops. Here's the thing. My thought is anything we can do to get neighborhood councils to start preparing their neighborhoods, okay? Whatever it may be, reading something online, coming to something like this, coming to something like Bill's, taking CERT courses, whatever we can do to get them started. Okay, there was an article in the paper, I won't go over the whole thing, Lucy Jones was part of it, but there was also a psychologist talking. And they talked about three ways that people handle fear. And one of them had to do with earthquakes. Earthquakes are unpredictable, so it's hard to plan. They're nasty. They don't occur very often. And so the way people handle fear on something like that is they ignore it. Okay? For the first couple of weeks after Northridge, everybody was into emergency preparedness. Okay? Anything, where they were ready to sign up for CERT, you name it. By the time 4 weeks had gone by, except for the people who were still fixing their houses, the memory was fading. And by the time 3 or 4 months, only thing people were worried about was how was their insurance going to pay for the damage to repair their houses, okay? They stopped thinking about what happens next time. And our goal here, whatever it may be, and this is a really good start because next month we'll talk about what goals could we look at for preparation to get neighborhood councils, to get these people moving and doing something, okay? Anybody who's here is going to be doing something. It's all the people who aren't here that aren't doing anything, okay? And it's all the people you talk to that say, well, you know, that's not a bad idea. Let me think about that. You know, water's a pretty good idea. Maybe. Well, listen, I've got a 6-pack of these liter bottles. I said, okay, let's just imagine that you got 4 people in the house and you're really conservative and you have only 1/2 of those bottles per day per person, okay? You aren't going to last very long. And this is the kind of mentality we've got to get past. Whatever we can do to get them started, I don't care what it is, we've got to set a starting point and get them moving. And then these great ideas that Bill will talk to us about next time, actually we're going to participate in it. We're going to be the ones bringing up, hi, this is what I expect to happen in my neighborhood. This is what I think we can do. One, to mitigate. Remember, there's a way to say, hi, I'm going to try and mitigate the damage before it happens, okay? And then, what can I do after it happens? And the city's working on that in their so-called sustainability and resilience thing. With any good fortune, well, not with any good fortune, I've got a meeting down here, I can't remember which day it is, but I've got a meeting down here with Aram Sahakian next week, and we're going to be talking about something. I don't know, how many of you, were any of you at the mayor's house for his earthquake thing? No? Okay. Well, I brought up the fact, well, yeah, I know, it's kind of one of these invitation things you get, come to the meetings. And that's one of the great things about being a commissioner, you get invited to everything, you know, even if you don't want to go. They were talking about the early warning system. The city of Los Angeles is kind of putting together their own early warning system along with the state. And Lucy Jones was there, and her now, the person who's taken her place with USGS, Dr. Hudnut, he was there. A number of others were there, and they were talking about this, and I kind of stood up, and I got recognized, and I thought the warning was a great thing, but it looked like in the budget this year, there wasn't any room for these emergency supplies that we'd like to spread around the city for all these first responders, like CERT people, to be able to use in case of earthquakes. And, you know, a bunch of people echoed the fact that that was really great. So that's what I'm going to be here talking about, because there's some way, maybe we can get a couple of those going and show the city how valuable they can be. And if we can get something like that, then next year we can start pointing out, we've got these now, let's put more of them. So that's what I'm saying. That is just a small start, okay? So maybe we'll have one of those in each bureau, so that's 4 of them, rather than having 35 to start with. Same thing with neighborhood council. Get them started on something, and then we can move from there, okay?
One thing I think that would be a good idea, these 3-hour, either the disaster awareness class, which I'm not sure if they're still doing because of their cutbacks on the CERT unit, but surviving the big one, 3-hour seminar. If you can get a couple neighborhood councils together to sponsor this class, get people in on this 3-hour seminar, and then have a CERT class scheduled after that, that can then daisy chain in. So you get people interested, there's no commitment, 3 hours, and then sign them up for the CERT class, which is already set up. Get them into that.
Bring that next month. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. All neighborhood councils can have a town hall on EP, and you can have something like that. Offer that 3-hour class during. Great idea. That's the kind of thing to bring with you next month when we start talking about what are the goals, how do we reach them, you know, things like that.
Yeah, well, then we seem to be going back to the same question again and again and again, which you just asked one more time. And at a certain point, we have to make that decision. I think it'd be more useful to have a unified plan in terms of communications. We've already had some presentations on that. What we haven't done is really brought it out to the neighborhood council level I'm ready to go. July, let's say August at the latest, I will be presenting to 3 or 4 or 5 neighborhood councils in the area and the regional alliance. So I want to know what it is now, if it's post 3 hours or if it's the fire department will be ready to offer CERT training to anybody who wants to take it. Fine. I don't believe that the fire department is. This is one of the points of having a political organization based around neighborhood councils that is willing to complain to the city. Make up your minds. Let's actually do something useful. But this is what I call, by the way, a miracle happens scenario, which is that we have a great goal in mind. We know where we want to end up. We know what the problem is 4 million people don't know what they're doing. Our goal is 20% of them will know what they're doing, and then in the middle is this great miracle happens scenario. There's no point in continuing to say CERT, CERT, CERT if the city is not prepared to train people in CERT. Therefore, there has to be an alternative on the assumption that we will have a big earthquake. If we don't have a big earthquake, no problem, no harm, no foul. But if we do, there's not going to be the miracle there. There won't be the CERT trained people there, and they won't have the organization. So let's just go ahead and do it and make up our minds and make sure that the city agencies, the mayor, the city council are aware that we are going to be doing this and we all have to be working together.
I think that's what next month will bring us to, Bob, because I think that's when people are going to come back with their goals and their recommended solutions, and then we will be able to standardize and say, but once again, you know, it's got to be a small starting point. And I don't believe that, CERT training is wonderful. They've got, how many trainers have they got?
3.
3? Okay.
3 times.
And I'm not going to go into the whole wait a minute, I'm not going to go into the whole politics of why they aren't increasing that with civilians such as that. But maybe there's alternative programs that we're going to be able to look at. And then we'll have to talk to the city about the fact that if they can't train people, they're going to have to recognize the alternative programs. It's just as simple as that, you know. And as far as communication, we've got different scenarios from ham to FRS to GMRS. These are the different kind of radios, and maybe different neighborhood councils will choose different types of radios to use. But we've got to get them started on, at least here is a methodology for communicating, okay? And then they'll have to choose those. Don't want to keep you guys over. Thank you for, although it's nice and cool in here, if you're going back to where I'm going to be going, it's going to be about 100 degrees or thereabouts. But thank you all for coming. Please grab the mic.